Now, the National Prosecuting Authority says its senior prosecutions team handling the corruption charges against former President Jacob Zuma is finalizing its work. The team is set to meet its deadline tomorrow to make a recommendation on whether or not to reinstate the charges against the former president. Prosecutors will hand their recommendation to NPA boss Shaun Abrahams, who will have a final say in that matter. Following a Supreme Court of Appeal ruling that set aside the 2009 NPA decision to drop charges against the former president filed fresh legal representations in January this year, essentially is saying why he should not face prosecution. A team of senior prosecutors was assigned to look into those fresh submissions, dropping the initial charges against former President Zuma, who was ANC president at the time, paved a way for him to assume office of state president. The Zuma matter comes as NPA boss Shaun Abrahams is fighting for his own survival as well. Well, there are so many political developments. SONA and the budget have sped by. A lot of anticipation about those charges and also about the cabinet reshuffle. So let's catch up with the ANC. Joining me in studio is spokesperson Pule Mabe. Thank you for being with us. Mr. Mabe, is it hard to catch your breath at the moment? Things are moving very quickly.
Yeah, things are moving very quickly, and as we have seen, the ANC itself is also on the ground doing work at various levels in government and in the party, making sure that we communicate one positive message to our people.
There's controversy around VAT. I mean, the markets were happy, the rand was happy. Many of the trade unions, pro-poor NGOs saying, what is this all about? To what extent does that budget change, the significant change, the first increase in 25 years, reflect the will of the ANC?
One of the things that you will have noticed is being done is the increase of VAT now begins to allow government to also focus its arsenal on doing quite a number of things. One of those is to attend to social relief. For instance, we have seen for the first time an increase of about 57 billion rand being allocated towards fee-free higher education over the MTF period. That alone speaks to the commitment that government has made to make sure that it will broaden and expand access to the poorest of the poor in the country, so that ultimately young people could be able to acquire gainful skills for them to be employed.
What would you say to those who are saying this is effectively a tax from the former administration of Jacob Zuma and reflects years of economic mismanagement that was allowed to happen under the ruling parties?
Well, let us give it to the Minister of Finance. I must say that under the conditions, and the statement that was issued by the party did reflect, by the ANC, did make that reflection. Under the conditions, one of the things that the Minister of Finance has been able to do was to draw a balancing act to make sure that while we try and deal with some of the social disparities that require fiscal investment from the state, we also try and address quite a number of things that will also contribute towards some economic growth in the short to medium term. That is quite important.
My question is, will the ANC take responsibility for some of the economic malaise that has led to this? We've got one of the highest unemployment rates in the world. We've been growing below our own potential. That's what analysts say, that we could be growing at a much higher rate. We hear again and again about policy uncertainty, which is an own goal that points to governance. So what role, what responsibility will the ANC take for the economic position we find ourselves in?
Well, there are quite a number of measures that have been announced, both in the State of the Nation's address and also in the budget policy statements on what needs to happen. One, there is increased and concerted effort to finance SMMEs so that they could begin playing a much bigger role well within your own township and village economies, so they could assist the state in the generation of jobs and all of that. These are consistent with the resolutions of the ANC and also found in our own January 8 statement. It's quite a number of things. The president of the country spoke about increasing the morality of the public service. And this is said will be undertaken, amongst other things, through making sure that you conduct wide-scale lifestyle audits. The same would have to also be happening even in SOEs. One of the things that was pronounced is you need to have SOEs that begin to be self-sustaining. so that you could be able to redirect the resources that you are currently providing on bailouts towards doing quite a number of things which are necessary to develop this country. I mean, the situation in South Africa is not different. It's not necessarily exclusive to us. The world over...
It is different. Sub-Saharan Africa, our neighbors are growing much faster than we are. We used to follow the world average. We are now way below that world average. There is general consensus that we are nowhere near where we could be.
But I think what we must also begin accepting ourselves is that there is a positive mood.
The rest of the world is growing very well.
But there is a positive mood. I mean, we have begun putting aside packages of funding, even for industrialization. We are placing greater emphasis on the township economy. We are trying to make sure that we use our own supply chain machinery to make sure that we redistribute resources to the poorest of the poor. What we've now done with higher education is part of that attempt as well. So they are efforts that when looked at together, they are trying to work towards us moving the country forward. But there's also an important thing as well on austerity measures. That as you even introduce austerity measures, even in your own public services, what you are trying to do is consolidate resources so that you could at least have a process of consolidating resources towards your strengthening your own fiscal position, so you could be able to use your resources to do other fundamentals, build the skills that are required by the economy. Because if you do not have the skills that the economy needs, you will not be able to achieve the growth that is wanted.
All right, we're running out of time. Let's talk about the big expectation, cabinet reshuffle. Is there consultation? Is there not? This is always the president's prerogative. What do you as the ANC know and expect?
Well, what we as the ANC know and expect is what you also know and expect, is what is written in the South African Constitution. We are not about to change the Constitution of the Republic. Those powers are left with the President. And of course, there is a process of engagement in the ANC by the top leadership. So that will not necessarily be a matter that the National Executive Committee of the ANC engages itself on. You can just imagine what would happen if the NEC was just to sit and begin zooming into those issues.
So you let that be a government executive function, you don't want to be involved? Well,
we have got a leadership in the ANC capable enough to be able to resolve those. I mean, I don't think that there's even a worry.
Can you give us any insight? When's this going to happen?
The insight of everything else is that we are going to see the unity of the ANC going forward. I'm sure that what we should all be looking forward to is a party that is united, strong, and works towards making sure that it asserts its own authority going into next year's elections.
Well, what would the party prefer? Because there seem to be two choices. You purge anyone who's linked to the Guptas, linked to a perceived corrupt network, or you reach out and try and achieve unity, but maybe at the cost of people saying, well, nothing's changed.
I'm sure that if you did not travel anywhere during this week, you might have seen the kind of unity that exists in the ANC. For the first time, I mean, you even had a farewell that President Ramaphosa had hosted for former President of the state, President Zuma, who had himself an opportunity to address members of the executive that he previously led, and encouraged them that they are not there to serve an individual. They are there to serve and fulfill the wishes of the ruling party. Well, this is the ANC in action.
On that, however, some people were saying, is this really authentic? Former President Jacob Zuma went on national television, on this channel, and said that he had been betrayed, that Cyril Ramaphosa had changed things, that he was not told, in fact, why he was being recalled. And now everybody's putting on this nice face. So first tell me, was that an authentic show of unity, show of cordial relations? And has the party now gone and told the president why he's been recalled?
Well, I can assure you that the unity in the ANC is not a rehashed project. The unity in the ANC is real. There is a camaraderie from amongst our own cadres. We love one another. There is that sense. And
but what about responsibility, holding people responsible for where the party got itself to?
Well, you will know that at all instances, when the party evaluates its own performance, whether it's at the polls, whether it's in the work that it does in government and all of that, there is always an attempt to make sure that as we take collective responsibility, we work together to introduce solution and remedial measures that will allow us to move forward without having to pinpoint blames on others and all of that. It's not helpful.
Have you told the president why he was recalled? And I must say, it left South Africans completely flummoxed because for a lot of commentators, there would be so many reasons, and the ANC couldn't give him one, couldn't give the public one.
Well, I'm sure that the public will also agree with us, and we wouldn't want to go back to that issue because there is a clause in the ANC constitution.
But are we not sweeping things under the carpet to protect somebody's dignity?
No. There's a clause in the ANC constitution, clause 12.2.21.2. That clause enjoins the National Executive Committee to redeploy its cadres. It deploys and redeploys its cadres from time to time. I don't think that we should want to get into...
You don't owe the public any explanation?
No, look, we've been to this... we've been to the SABC before. We've expressed ourselves quite at length. I think it is now time for the ANC to move forward, to do what is required, consolidate what we have gained on the ground, make sure that, President Zuma himself is on record as saying he's going to go to the ground and work towards decisive victory of the ANC. What I can tell you now is that cadres of the ANC are of one mind. Our focus now is to make sure that in 2019 we retain our power in the Western Cape and ultimately get two-thirds majority nationally.
Tomorrow, we just ran that story. The prosecutors will go to the NPA boss, Shaun Abrahams, about those charges and counts against the president. Are you following that case closely?
Well, we are, and I'm sure that the ANC should not be drawn into such cases. I'm sure that what would have to happen is that at the right time and when required, I'm sure the leadership will have expressed itself and be able to comment accordingly.
In finality, there's this major shift. Suddenly there seems to be this will on the part of prosecuting authorities, the asset forfeiture unit. There's a lot of arrests, a lot of probes. We're hearing tonight from Home Affairs that there's been a visit to ANN7 looking at visa documents. What do you say to South Africans who are suspicious that given the timing, it looks like everything is politically motivated when it comes to the whole nexus, the whole crime authority nexus?
Well, we wouldn't necessarily want to get into that space. Safe to say that, for the media to be fair to everyone else, including the party, we'd have to check. We might be talking about things that have been ongoing, so I don't think that we should really be getting into that space. Safe to say that at the right time, when the party is fully informed and privy to some of these things, we'll be able to accordingly respond to those. There is a positive action by the Minister of Police, and I saw the President earlier speaking about it, about the Ngobo case. As the Minister of Finance was busy delivering the budget policy statement, Minister Mbalula had flown himself to the Eastern Cape to attend to a case of 5 men who went and I don't know I don't have the actual number, but who went and opened fire at the police station. Already getting reports. This should also send. Are you saying this is also timing as well? This should be sending a positive message. Already receiving reports that suspects have been long-standing
cases involving politically connected
but we should also
very different.
But I'm just saying in the spirit and context of a positive vibe. In the country, we should be able to look at all of these things holistically.
And welcome them. Thank you so much for your time this evening. The spokesperson of the ANC, Pule Mabe.